Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own. Immerse yourself in the insightful world of Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, a thought-provoking exploration of the challenges women face in achieving artistic greatness. The book highlights the societal barriers that have prevented women from realizing their creative potential throughout history, including financial instability, exclusion from academic institutions, and lack of access to resources. Journey alongside Woolf as she draws upon vivid examples from the lives of female artists, examining the social and psychological constraints that have shaped their work, and envision a future where gender no longer hinders the pursuit of creativity.
Unleashing women's artistic potential. Walking along a picturesque river in the late 1920s, renowned novelist Virginia Woolf contemplated the connection between gender and creativity. Her musings were cut short when a man informed her that the area was reserved for university scholars, highlighting the exclusion of women from academic and creative spaces. As Woolf continued exploring the campus and its impressive architecture, she pondered the contrast between the abundant resources and support available to men and the economic insecurity faced by women pursuing their intellectual interests. This disparity, Woolf realized, deeply impacted the creative output of women who were denied the same opportunities as their male counterparts. During a crisp fall day, Virginia Woolf relished her surroundings as she strolled along a beautiful river on a college campus. While deep in thought, her intellectual reverie was interrupted by a man who informed her that the riverbank lawn was meant only for scholars affiliated with the university. This encounter prompted Woolf to consider more seriously the obstacles preventing women from engaging in artistic pursuits. As Woolf walked around the campus, admiring the grand university buildings, she realized how these structures symbolized centuries of wealth, time, and effort invested in education, all primarily for the benefit of men. She became more acutely aware of the stark exclusion of women from academic and cultural institutions. A nearby library, for example, housed valuable original copies of works by renowned authors like Milton and Thackeray. However, Woolf and other women could only gain entry with a male scholar's accompaniment. Later, attending a luxurious luncheon with fellow intellectuals, Woolf continued reflecting on this gender divide. Conversing with her friend Mary Seaton, she discussed the women's college in the area. In contrast to the men's university, the women's institution struggled financially, even scraping together funds to keep classes running. This discrepancy reinforced the unequal support and resources available for men and women in their creative and intellectual journeys. Through these observations, Woolf identified the undeniable differences in the conditions granted to men and women pursuing artistic or intellectual careers. Men often enjoyed comfortable accommodations and a secure environment for their scholarly activities, while women faced economic hardships and societal prejudice. This inequality led Woolf to wonder about the full potential of women's creativity. What artistic heights could they reach with the same opportunities and privileges afforded to their male peers? To truly unleash the greatness of women in the arts, Woolf concluded that they must be provided with both financial stability and the necessary space to cultivate their passions. Gender imbalance in literature. As Virginia Woolf browsed the British Library, she noted the significant disparity between books about women written by men and books about men written by women. This observation led her to contemplate the deep-seated insecurity that drives men to deny women opportunities and downplay their accomplishments. Virginia Woolf embarked on an exploration at the British Library to better understand the societal differences between women and men. While browsing through a massive collection of books, pamphlets, and indexes, she discovered an intriguing imbalance: thousands of books about women, written exclusively by male authors. Curiously, there were no reciprocal publications about men by female authors. This discrepancy highlights the Western world's penchant for making women the subject of inspection while denying them the opportunity to be the observers. At its core, this behavior reveals men's intent to maintain power and elevate their own gender over women. As Woolf delved into various books about women at the library, she discovered a range of opinions and ideas about them, penned by men. Some portrayed women as naive, immature, and uneducable, while others glorified them as ethereal, mystical goddesses. None of these contrasting characterizations seemed accurate or nuanced. Woolf found particular amusement in a voluminous work by a renowned professor, titled The Mental, Moral, and Physical Inferiority of the Female Sex. The absurdity of the premise led her to envision the male author as an unattractive man with a pronounced inferiority complex, seeking retribution for past rejection by women. Despite the pitiable nature of such a man, Woolf acknowledged that he held a more advantageous position in society than most women. A quick scan of newspaper headlines underscored the unquestionable power and influence of men, from governing nations to dominating business and sports coverage. The structural supremacy of men over women would be evident even to an extraterrestrial visitor. This inequality made Woolf question why men were so dedicated to belittling women and dismissing their work. She theorized that this compulsion stemmed from a deep-rooted insecurity and an obsession with asserting their position in the world. It must provide reassurance knowing that they are superior to at least half the people in any given room. One can only wonder how many achievements of women have been stifled by this pervasive mindset. Unleashing suppressed female talent. William Shakespeare's works remain among the greatest of all time, with countless male artists of the Elizabethan era leaving their mark on history. However, talented women from the same period faced massive barriers to their creativity, including lack of education, money, and encouragement. Fiction across time has presented strong, complex female characters from Antigone to Lady Macbeth and Anna Karenina. Yet, in real-life historical accounts, women's accomplishments are often relegated to the sidelines. Even during Elizabethan England, women were typically uneducated, confined to domestic duties, and married off against their desires. The story of the imagined Judith Shakespeare, sister of William, exemplifies these barriers, suggesting a wealth of untold masterpieces that may have never manifested due to society's stifling of female genius. Throughout history, gifted women faced numerous obstacles that prevented them from realizing their full potential. While significant male achievements have been well documented and celebrated, the vast majority of talented women were denied the opportunity to share their genius with the world. From early education to financial resources, women faced distinct disadvantages when pursuing artistic ambitions. Elizabethan England, an era that produced thought-provoking plays and beautiful sonnets, was no exception. While several men like William Shakespeare made history, women were condemned to lives filled with domestic responsibilities and limited opportunities for personal growth. Imagining a world where William Shakespeare had a gifted sister, Judith, illuminates the frustrations and limitations faced by talented women at the time. Judith would have had to battle societal expectations, teaching herself to read and write while juggling the daily chores designated to her. She would have poured her heart into her works in complete secrecy, fully aware that her father would disapprove of her creativity. To chase her dreams, Judith would need to leave behind everything she knew, a daunting prospect for young women in the 16th century. Judith Shakespeare's story is a fictional representation, but countless real-life gifted women have undoubtedly encountered similar tribulations. With each barrier imposed, the potential for artistic brilliance was suppressed, leaving our history books deprived of masterpieces by female talents. These socially imposed challenges could have driven many women to mental distress or worse. The severe scarcity of successful female artists in history left aspiring female creatives without role models to encourage them. This lost potential for artistic genius is a reminder that opportunity, rather than natural ability, often stands in the way of greatness. Society's responsibility is to dismantle these barriers and enable women to fulfill their creative ambitions, ensuring that future generations recognize and celebrate the extraordinary talents of both men and women. Constraints on female writers. Lady Winchilsea, born into nobility and passion for poetry, was considered peculiar, leaving her bitter and with a hostile writing environment. Aphra Behn broke barriers for female writers and set the stage for writers to come, like Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters. However, even with increased opportunities, women's literary works were influenced by their social conditions and limitations. Lady Winchilsea, born in 1661, was a woman of noble background and had the privilege of education and resources to write poetry. However, her peers saw her passion as unusual and her solitary time at her desk as a sign of melancholy. Consequently, she faced social ostracism, which left her bitter and affected her work. She once wrote, "My lines decried, and my employment thought, / useless folly or presumptuous fault." From this, it is evident that despite her status, Lady Winchilsea faced artistic limitations. Although social conditions for women writers have improved, their work is still influenced by these constraints today. As a determined writer, Aphra Behn was an exception, earning respect for female writers through her financial success derived from plays and novels. Following her example, more women pursued artistic expression through writing, leading to prominent figures like Jane Austen, George Eliot, real name, Marian Evans, and the Bronte sisters in the 19th century. These women shared a few common traits: a stable financial background, no children to care for, and the use of male pseudonyms by the Brontes and Eliot. Still, external realities affected their work. They primarily focused on novels because this format enabled them to write with added domestic distractions. Although Emily Bronte and Eliot might have had preferences for poetry and history, they settled for literary fiction that suited their situations. Moreover, their social conditions molded the themes that prevailed in their work. While male writers like Tolstoy drew from adventurous experiences to create masterpieces, women's writings merely reflected their circumscribed existence. Consequently, they centered their stories on domestic and mundane topics. Though they managed to transform these subjects into captivating tales, one can only imagine the possibilities if they had the complete artistic freedom like their male counterparts. Breaking boundaries in literature. The late 1920s marked a turning point for women's writing, as female authors began to venture into uncharted territory. Diverse in both genre and subject matter, these women found creative freedom in their works, unveiling the world with fresh eyes. Mary Carmichael's novel Life's Adventure exemplifies this shift, exploring previously unrepresented aspects of women's relationships and experiences. This refreshing viewpoint opened up new artistic ground for women writers, allowing them to challenge conventional perspectives and create an unprecedented impact on literature. The late 1920s signaled a new dawn for women's literature. You could find books on topics ranging from Greek archaeology to art and aesthetics and histories of distant lands. But fiction, covering romance, fantasy, and realism, also flourished with female writers showcasing impressive literary prowess. So, what made this era unique for women writers? Let's delve into Mary Carmichael's Life's Adventure to find out. The book revealed a distinct departure from the past in several ways. For instance, Carmichael's writing shifted from the more elaborate style of predecessors like Austen and Bronte to a concise, brisk prose. A simple yet revolutionary sentence in the novel, "Chloe liked Olivia," further illustrates the change. This depiction of a cordial, supportive relationship between two women defied conventions where women were pitted against each other or solely defined by their relations with men. By centering on the professional bond between Chloe and Olivia, Carmichael propelled literature beyond its boundaries. Moreover, the portrayal of Chloe and Olivia as female scientists collaborating in a laboratory stemmed from Carmichael's willingness to explore new horizons. This refreshing perspective allowed women's fiction to evolve from the limited domain of upper-class society to a more extensive tapestry of experiences. Female authors began to depict women from various walks of life with greater depth and authenticity than their male counterparts ever could. The late 1920s also witnessed women writers boldly turning their literary gaze to men. Since it was challenging for men to thoroughly examine themselves, women writers could offer fresh, unparalleled insights into the complexities of the opposite sex. By setting aside any simmering resentment, female authors pioneered a novel approach towards capturing male characters with intricacy and care. In conclusion, the late 1920s marked a transformative moment for women's literature. By embracing diversity, venturing into uncharted thematic territories, and offering unique perspectives on relationships and experiences. Women writers shattered the mold and forever changed the landscape of fiction. In doing so, their work not only left an indelible mark on the literary world but also paved the way for future generations of female authors to continue breaking boundaries and overcoming limitations. Beyond binary thinking. As you observe the beauty in the simple interaction between a man and a woman on a London street, a realization strikes you: maybe it's best to look beyond social categories like gender. It dawns on you that the most exceptional artists thrive when they can transcend rigid binary perspectives. The human mind is inherently inventive and flexible, and it has the astounding ability to empathize with others, see the world from new vantage points, and envision experiences beyond its own. Tapping into this creative power is essential for artistic success. Samuel Taylor Coleridge conceived the idea of the androgynous mind, which operates beyond the male-female binary. It assimilates both male and female viewpoints and discovers artistic paths that don't exclusively conform to either gender. Virginia Woolf posited that history's greatest authors possessed androgynous minds. Unfortunately, the late 1920s was a time when society remained obsessively aware of gender, and men felt imperiled by women becoming politically empowered. This fear led to a resurgence of exaggerated masculine ideals, consequently giving rise to substandard art and perilous political movements such as fascism in Italy. Woolf envisioned a future where individuals, regardless of their gender, could chase their ambitions, particularly in the arts, without their identities being distorted by societal gender expectations. She argued that artists shouldn't concern themselves with comparing the relative worth of the sexes, but instead concentrate on connecting with reality in its entirety. Woolf believed that this mindset, coupled with access to adequate resources, constituted the optimal pathway to producing outstanding art.
In the end, Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own masterfully illuminates the plight of women artists, convincingly arguing that they need both money and space in order to achieve greatness. From historical examples of talented women denied the opportunity to express themselves, to the disparity between the resources afforded to male and female artists, Woolf's work brings into focus the impact of gender discrimination on artistic endeavors. Encouraging artists to transcend the limitations of gender and seek a more inclusive understanding of reality, Woolf ultimately invites readers to reimagine a world where creativity is unhindered by societal divisions and where every artist has room to create.